that clarified that this, what's called the machine or transformation test, is not the only test for software or business methods. So let me be a little bit more specific. So if you have some software in the United States, to get a patent on it, you have to tie it to the computer. Which seems like an arbitrary requirement, but that's just the way it is. So you can't just claim that your software does something. There has to be some tie to a particular machine. And by machine, I mean hardware. So you have to specifically, in the patent claim, describe what the hardware is. Or you have to describe what the transformation is that's taking place, that the software is achieving, or that the method is achieving. So some sort of physical transformation. So if it's a program that turns oranges into orange juice, that's okay because you're describing the physical process that has happened, right? So it's a program that does that. USPTO no longer accepts structure recited only in the preamble of the claims. What that means is that this description of what the patent does cannot just be in the preamble, and I'll go back to the patent and show you what the preamble is, but it has to actually be in the main section of the claims. The preamble doesn't carry much weight in a US patent. 3 types of claims typically found in software patents. The method of the particular steps, and that's tied to the machine. The system that's configured to perform the particular steps. And then what we call the non-transitory computer, which is the hardware that stores the computer. So a good software patent in the United States will cover the invention in these 3 ways. You'll have the method of the steps that the software does, the system that's running it, and then the hardware that's storing it. So let's take a look at this patent. Okay, so claim 1. I don't know if you can see that from back in the room, but the first 3 lines of claim 1, a system for providing access to a personal computer having a location on the internet defined by a dynamic IP address from a remote computer, the system comprising, : So those first 3 lines are the preamble. They carry little weight at the patent office. So remember I made the point that you can't put these requirements in the preamble. You have to put them in the main part of the claim. Now the next part of the claim, you see there's A, B, C, and then there's some more text. I'm not going to bore you with going through all of those, but I just want you to see the anatomy of this claim. This is the system claim. Remember I said you could cover the method, the system, and the computer hardware. So this, claim number 1, covers the system. And what are the components of the system? The personal computer linked to the internet, that's the computer that's at home to be accessed. B, a locator server computer, that's the server computer with the static IP address out on the internet. And then C, the remote computer linked to the internet, that's the one at the airport. See, so they've nicely broken this up. In their system, they've described the 3 components of the system, and then the rest of the language describes how those 3 components interact with each other. Okay? So you're thinking to yourself, well, where's the software part? Again, we're not going to put code into the patent, but rather we describe what the software is doing in English. And this, this claim is the system claim. So it covers the components of the system. Now, if I go to claim 21, and unfortunately, well, let's see. Okay, claim 21 starts on the right column at the top, and then continues down to the left column. A method for providing access to a personal computer from a remote computer. So now, remember, this is the second of the 3 types of of claims that you should have in a software patent, which is now the method. Okay? And so they describe in the preamble what the method is. Okay? The method comprising the steps of, colon, and then you get the steps. A, B, C, D. And again, I won't read all this to you, but what the steps that are described in the patent claims are, is it's actually telling you what the software is actually accomplishing on a step-by-step basis. And that's the method of practicing this invention. The last type, remember there are three types of claims that you should have in a well-defined US patent covering software. So we've talked about the system, we've talked about the method. Now the last type is the actual computer readable hardware. So take a look at claim 24, for example. A computer program product for use on a server computer linked to the internet. So what this is covering is the program, the software computer program that's running on that server out on the internet. Just that code, right? So it's separate from the system, which covered the components. It's separate from the method, which stepped through all of the steps of the software in terms of executables. This is just covering the software that's residing and the hardware that's storing that software on the computer, the server computer on the internet. So it defines the computer program product for use on a server computer. Then there's some more language, and it says comprising a computer usable medium. That's just a hard drive, right? That's any flash drive or hard drive or anything like that. B, computer readable program code. Recorded or storable in the computer readable medium. Okay, that's just the code. It doesn't say what it does. Wherein the server computer program is operable to enable a connection between the remote computer, that's the airport, and the server computer, which is the one on the internet. So it's just broadly defining what it does, but it's covering the hardware. And if I remember correctly, claim 26 does the same thing. A computer program product for use on the personal computer. That's the computer at home. So again, it's claiming the hardware that stores the software on the home computer. Remember, there's some software on that home computer that's sending those intermittent messages to the server in this invention. And so in this way, this patent that we just looked at is well written in that it covers the software program in each of the three traditional ways that you should. Okay. So an example of acceptable method claim tied to a machine. We just saw the example in the 479 patent, which I showed you. And remember, claim 21 was the method claim that I just illustrated. This is from another patent application that we were working on recently. A method for tracking brand interaction using a computer system. The method comprising, colon, so that's the preamble, receiving by the computer system information defining a plurality of brand interactions, and then there's more language. Now, there's a reason why I've bolded receiving by the computer system, and I'm going to come back to why that's an important part of this claim. and why it's a best practice in these method claims to tie it to the machine. Remember, you have to either tie the software to the machine, or you have to show some physical transformation that's taking place. This receiving by the computer system is a best practice for tying it to the machine, and I'll show you why. One of the other best practices is to include process flowcharts in the software application, and you saw in the 479 patent that I showed you, the one that was litigated just 2 weeks ago, there were a number of flow diagrams, and in fact they're required by the patent office if you have method claims, because they want to see in a graphical format what the methods of the software that you're trying to cover really are. You should also include the physical system in the software applications. This is the hardware that I was talking about. So you must describe a physical system or structure that can implement the software, at least generically. So nobody's requiring you to go into great detail as to the hardware that's required, but at least you should have some sort of description generically of what your hardware is going to do. And this is a good example. Again, this is just taken from a patent application that we've been working on. Yeah?
So because the physical device has been described here as a computer system,
yes.
How does it now go to the new age devices like the tablet? So is there going to be another patent going to be granted to the device changes?
Probably not. So when I say that the physical system is defined generically, look at what I've got, and this is from an actual patent application, right? So it's something as simple as I/O controller, system memory, central processor. The tablets have those things too, right? Speaker, display adapter, monitor. So this is what I mean by a generic description of the hardware.
Because I'm sure the word computer system also has a definition before it's being used in the legal term, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You can define that to mean what you want it to mean. So if you're talking about the hardware specifically, right?
No, because most of the software patent says works on a system.
On a system, right.
And today, the hardware is revolutionized, right? And the interaction with the tablet is different. And what the tablet provides is different. Like in the previous slide, you had sensors,
right?
Which kind of influence how the software would be. So it's going to be distinction.
So let me get more specific. So if you have a patent that covers the way that the software interacts with the hardware, then absolutely I agree with you. That if the hardware changes, then the way that the software interacts with the hardware.
It's like the Amazon one click. Now
right.
Does it become one touch?
Right, one touch. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's a good example of if they said one click in the Amazon patent, and they defined that one click to the exclusion of the touch, then one touch wouldn't be covered by that patent. You'd have to look at the claim language of the patent to see how broadly or narrowly they actually describe the one click. I don't know that off the top of my head, but yeah, so that's a good example of that. And so these days, I think the claims are written in a way that have some foresight. So you wouldn't talk about clicks anymore. You talk about selection. One selection step, right? So that's broad enough to cover a click, or a touch, or a eye blink. You know, maybe that's the next step. You know.
But doesn't it make the whole patent unviable because intuitiveness be deemed to be a patentable?
Well, that's a very good question, because so where do you draw the line, right? At what point is something so intuitive that it's either obvious or it's at that point not useful anymore? You raise a good point, and that's the whole process of the patent prosecution at the U.S. Patent Office, which is you as the inventor want to convince the examiner and the patent office that your invention is different, and it's substantially different in some way. But No, I think you've identified the tension that exists. That's right. And it's not. There's no consistent application. That's the problem. There's no consistent application of what is, the next kind of inventive step versus what isn't.
Are processes themselves, patentable?
Yeah, like methods.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, there's this machine or transformation test, which is that if you have a process, you have to tie it to the machine. This is what I've been saying. You have to, in the patent claim language, you have to tie it to the machine, or you have to tie it to some physical transformation.
Is it a machine, or it could be any machine?
Any machine. At least one machine. Yeah. And so we were just talking about, in the slides, we were talking about how one ties it to the machine. And one way that I was advocating is by using something like this language, receiving by the computer system. So you have some process, and you say, okay, I have a method using a computer system, the method comprising receiving by the computer system, and then you'd say what is received. And I'll explain why this is a preferred way of writing the software patent claim. Okay, so we were talking about the physical system, just a generic description. Okay, so there's a case that's pending in the United States now on appeal, the CLS Bank case. And that pertains to US patent number 7149720, which is directed to digital escrows. So holding money, on one for one party on behalf of another, it's all electronic. Okay. And the trial court said that the patent is invalid because this concept, and this goes to your question, this concept of an escrow already exists. And the concept of internet banking already exists. So it would be, there's no new inventive step here. And this is claim 1 from the patent, and I don't expect anybody to read this. But I've highlighted a few things, just 2 phrases. A data processing system to enable the exchange of an obligation between parties. That's a rather dense way of describing the escrow. And they say comprising a data storage unit. You see, they were tying it to the hardware. A data storage unit having stored therein information about a shadow credit record. And then a computer coupled to the data storage unit that is configured to do several steps. So they have the data storage unit and a computer coupled to the data storage unit. Okay, that's how they were tying it to the machine. And the appellate court reversed and said, no, that's okay. We're going to allow this patent claim. And the quote from that decision is, a claim that's drawn to a specific way of doing something with a computer is likely to be patent eligible. Whereas a claim to nothing more than the idea of doing that same thing on a computer is not. But that's a pretty fine distinction, right? So if you have an idea of doing something on a computer, but you don't claim the computer, you're not going to get a patent in the United States. By simply reciting the data storage unit linked to the computer, which really isn't the crux of the invention anyway, it suddenly becomes patent eligible. Doesn't make much sense, but that's the law in the United States.
That is just one of the criteria.
That's just one of the criteria. But again, it's a necessary criteria. This is now going back to the tying the software to the machine. How do we tie it to the mission? In this case, the Federal Circuit, that's the appellate court, decided that the computer plays a significant part in the performance of the invention. Okay? That statement, frankly, is pretty arbitrary. Because you could easily think of a situation that's very similar to this. And let me go back to the patent claim. All they're saying is the computer coupled to the data storage is configured to do these three things. So it's not clear to me, and it's not clear to many people, why just reciting, without anything more, the data storage unit and the computer coupled to the data storage unit was enough for the appellate court to say that the computer plays a significant part of the performance of the invention. Of course it does. The computer plays a significant part of any software, because the software needs to run on something.
Just one question.
Yeah,
When you say computer plays a part,
yeah.
does the specific computer, suppose I'm using a Dell laptop, does the Dell laptop become part of the patent?
No.
It is just any device.
It's just any device. Yeah. And so this definition of an abstract idea is what is being decided by the appeals court. So where do we draw the line between the computer playing a significant part of the performance of the invention, which is of course going to be the case for software, and something else? So that's what's being decided at the moment. So I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about joint and divided infringement. And you may recall at the beginning I talked about direct infringement and indirect infringement. And this falls into the indirect infringement part. Essentially, recently there's been some case law change in the United States. And I'll kind of get to the point, which is that it's no longer necessary to prove that all of the steps are committed by the single entity. So you can have direct infringement even if you have different people doing different parts. And that's important for the inducement also. So think about the Amazon one-click, one selection patent, right? So Amazon has a patent, but it's really the user who is making that selection. So is it the user that's infringing? Can Amazon come and round us all up and say, okay, you've all infringed my patent, pay me? Or is it more complicated than that? And that's